Okay, hello. Um, there's some colouring sheets for the children, and I hope they might enjoy the pictures. I hope you enjoy the pictures as well. So, let's get, oh, wait a minute, I've got to press over there, haven't I? Good. Wrong one. There we are. So I'm going to continue in the Women of Faith series. So far, we've heard about Deborah, Ruth, and Esther, who are all very brave and inspiring women. Today, I'm going to talk about Elizabeth. So Christmas is getting earlier and earlier, as this is part of the Christmas story. We only hear about Elizabeth in the first chapter of Luke's Gospel. So if you want to look it up, it's just in the first chapter of Luke's Gospel. Elizabeth was Mary, the mother of Jesus' cousin. Whoops. There. She was a lot older than Mary. Mary was a teenager when she had Jesus, but Elizabeth was now too old to have children. You may have noticed her grey hair. I'm going to talk about Elizabeth's walk with God, how she was faithful and quietly obedient to what God wanted her to do in her life. Elizabeth had a husband called Zachariah. Oops. Right. He was a priest, and he had lots of duties and special things to do in the temple. And Elizabeth's father had been a priest. In fact, both of them had come from a family of priests. Their fathers, grandfathers, great-grandfathers, and many before them were all priests. This meant that they knew a lot about God. And Elizabeth understood all about the special jobs that Zachariah had to do in the temple, how he had to look after the holy utensils, and even how the clothes that the priests wore had to be very carefully made. When Luke writes about Elizabeth and Zachariah in the Bible, he says they were both righteous before God, walking blamelessly in all the commandments and statutes of the Lord. This meant that they led a good life. They didn't just know about God, but they knew him and wanted to serve him and please him. People liked them and respected them. But they had no children, which was very, very hard, especially in those days, because people thought that being married without children meant that God wasn't pleased with you. They prayed for many years for a child. Elizabeth and Zachariah probably wondered, why don't we have children? Is God not pleased with us? Elizabeth probably wanted to be like her friends. She wanted children in her home and have birthday parties with them. However, we know that they had done nothing wrong. They were blameless before God. Elizabeth and Zachariah were probably confused, sad, and disappointed. But Elizabeth didn't allow her sadness to spoil her relationship or her walk with God. Then one day, something wonderful happened. There was only one priest who was allowed to go into the special place in the temple to perform duties. The special place was the holiest place of all. It was the Holy of Holies, and one priest only went in there once a year. There were lots of priests, so they had to draw lots to choose someone. This is a bit like putting names into a hat. This time, it was Zachariah's turn to go in. This was such a special privilege, and it would be the only opportunity he had to do it, as the priests just had one chance in their lives. He went into this place in the temple alone to burn incense, whilst other people prayed outside. So I'm going to read Luke 1, verses 11 and 17 from the Message Bible. Unannounced, an angel of God appeared just to the right of the altar of incense. Zachariah was paralyzed with fear. Now, this was the angel Gabriel who we hear about at Christmas and who spoke to Mary. But the angel reassured him, "Don't fear, Zechariah. Your prayer has been heard. Elizabeth, your wife, will bear a son by you. You are to call him John. You're going to leap like a gazelle for joy. And not only you, many will delight in his birth. He'll achieve great stature with God. He'll drink neither wine nor beer. He'll be filled with the Holy Spirit from the moment he leaves his mother's womb. He will turn many sons and daughters of Israel back to their God. He'll get the people ready for God." Wow. After all these years, Elizabeth was going to have a baby. And this baby was going to grow up close to God. And God is saying here that he has a very special plan for this baby's life. Zechariah found this very hard to believe. And he said to the angel, "How can this be? Elizabeth and I are very old." Now, because Zechariah didn't believe what the angel had to say, the angel said that Zechariah would be speechless until the baby is born. Now, we can go on to talk about Zechariah here, but today we're concentrating on Elizabeth. Elizabeth must have wondered, as all the people did, why Zechariah was such a long time in the temple. Then when he came out, they could see by the look on his face that he'd seen a vision. When Zechariah went home, he must have drawn or made signs to show Elizabeth what the angel had said to him. How did Elizabeth react? It appears that Elizabeth accepted this news. She didn't doubt. She didn't complain. She didn't say, "I'm too old. Why has God waited until now?" She didn't question why the angel didn't tell her or talk to her. I may have been a bit jealous. Why didn't God speak to me? Elizabeth didn't see the angel, but she quietly trusted and had faith in God. A little while later, Elizabeth found out that she was indeed going to have a baby. Elizabeth didn't go around telling people either. Luke tells us that for 5 months, Elizabeth kept herself hidden. I wonder why. She may not have wanted to talk about this unusual situation. She may have wanted to be quiet before God and to see if this promise would come to pass. She probably wanted to talk to him about so many things that must have been going through her mind. We read that she did think, "Now people will stop thinking there's something wrong with me." That must have been so hard for her. For years, she'd been worried and sad about what people thought about her. I know that I often worry about what people think about me. I wonder how Elizabeth coped with this feeling. She probably prayed about it a lot. It must have been a struggle. But what I do know is that she didn't let it spoil her relationship with God. She refused to give way to any bitterness and resentment and continued to walk with God. Although Elizabeth was concerned about what others thought, it appears that she herself was at peace that she wasn't to blame for not having a child. Sometimes we worry in case something is our fault. If we feel like that, we could tell someone and ask them to pray and be released from that feeling. During the time that Elizabeth was on her own, Luke says in the 6th month, Mary went to see her. Now, this is the Christmas bit. The angel Gabriel had told Mary that she was going to have a son called Jesus. And angel Gabriel also told her that her cousin Elizabeth was also going to have a son, even though Elizabeth was old. When Elizabeth heard Mary coming to see her, Luke tells us that the baby leaped inside Elizabeth and that Elizabeth was filled with the Holy Spirit, Elizabeth sang out a blessing to Mary that said, "Why am I so blessed that the mother of my Lord visits me? The moment the sound of your greeting entered my ears, the babe inside me skipped like a lamb for sheer joy." In Luke 1, verse 15, the angel had told Zechariah that their baby will be filled with the Holy Spirit as soon as he was born. Here, as Elizabeth sang out to Mary, maybe she felt that her own child had already recognized that God's Son was near. Elizabeth had faith and trusted that what the angel said would happen. After a while, Elizabeth's baby was born. And when the baby was 8 days old, the people were going to name the baby Zechariah, after his father. But in Luke 1, we read that Elizabeth says, "No, he's to be called John." But they said, "No one in your family is named that." They used sign language to ask Zechariah what he wanted him named. Asking for a tablet, Zechariah wrote, "His name is to be John." That took everyone by surprise. Surprise followed surprise. Zechariah's mouth was now open, his tongue loose, and he was talking and praising God. This was very brave of Elizabeth to tell everyone that the baby's name is John, because in those days, babies were given the same name as their father or someone else in the family. Elizabeth was brave to step out and go against tradition, against what they were all expecting. She had to be brave and not worry about what people might think or say, because she wanted to be faithful to God and do what God wanted. When Zechariah wrote on a writing tablet, "His name is John," his mouth was opened and he was able to speak. The neighbors were fearful. God was moving. They were experiencing something amazing that was out of their comfort zone. It was exciting, but also a bit scary. They said, "What then will this child be? There's something very different about him." John means the Lord is a gracious giver. God is blessing his people through John, who is later known as John the Baptist. Zechariah then sang out a song about God's wonderful plan for those who love him. John was part of this plan. John was to be the one to get the people ready for Jesus' coming. John did grow up to tell the people about God's Son Jesus coming, and he prepared the way for him. God was able to use Elizabeth in his plan because she was faithful, obedient, brave, and trusted him. Elizabeth let the Holy Spirit come and work in her. For a very long time, she had no fruit in the way of a child, but she showed all the fruits of the Holy Spirit in her life, which are love, joy, peace, long-suffering, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. I find Elizabeth inspiring because she accepted her life as it was. She understood God and quietly trusted and waited for him. She believed that even though she was too old to have children, God could bring about the impossible. Then God answered her prayer and did the impossible, and she then had fruit in the way of a child. Is there anywhere in my life where I feel empty, barren, lacking ideas? I can pray, as Elizabeth did, for the Holy Spirit to come and give fruit in that area. There have been times when I don't know what to say in meetings, or I don't know how to do something, and God has helped me when I've asked him. We don't always know when or how God will answer, but he does hear us, and he says that he has a perfect plan and a time for everything. Okay.
Thank you, Jane.
Okay.